Hey everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Soundcheck. I'm your host, Ricky Moctezuma, and that intro song you just heard was Forget by Twin Shadow. And introductions in order, Soundcheck is basically going to be a show all about music and audio. Normally I'm going to format the show with the first half being sort of a music report kind of segment, so we're going to talk about music news, album of the week, new releases, all that sort of thing. And then the second half will be about like a topic of discussion. So maybe it'll be informative. Maybe I'll talk about a concept in audio production, or maybe I'll have someone else on the show to talk about, the state of music or kind of discussion topics like this, more opinionated. So we'll see how that goes as we continue with the show. Anyways, let's jump right into the music reports segment. So, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2019 nominees were announced, and they include Def Leppard, Janet Jackson, Radiohead, Kraftwerk, and Rage Against the Machine, as well as many others. Voting will be open on rockhall.com. I'm not sure when, but this looks like a heck of a ballot. It looks really fun. Lots of great musicians on here. I'm surprised that Def Leppard and Janet Jackson, Rage Against the Machine, they haven't been inducted yet. But I'm also excited to see sort of Radiohead and Kraftwerk on there, kind of more indie electronic stuff as well. In other news, Chris Cornell actually has a new self-titled posthumous album / compilation coming out on November 16th, and it features Prince's, or a cover of Prince's Nothing Compares to You, and I think that might already be out, so go check that out if you want to listen to it. Chris Cornell, as you all know, died last year. Very tragic, but it's nice to see that new material is coming out this year. Definitely get excited for that. Gibson Guitars is finally out of bankruptcy after naming a new CEO, James J.C. Curley, who is actually the former president of Levi Strauss and Company. Yes, the jeans company. So we'll see how that goes, but it's nice to see that Gibson is back on its feet. Since they've been so important in rock and roll history and just in the guitar community. They invented the Les Paul. That's like one of the most famous guitars ever. So glad to see that they're still on their feet. Drake beat the Beatles on the charts again. He's had 12 top singles in 2018 versus the Beatles having 11 top 10 singles in 1964, which was sort of the peak of Beatlemania. So, tell your parents that one, see how they react. Anyways, let's move on to our album of the week segment. And for this week, we're going to be doing my absolute favorite album of all time, which is Silent Alarm by Bloc Party. Now, I first heard Bloc Party after playing one of their songs on Guitar Hero 3. If any of you had a childhood, you better have played Guitar Hero 3. Amazing game, and honestly, it shaped my early music taste. Anyways, they had their song Helicopter on there, and the first time I heard it, I was like, this is amazing. I love playing it. And it's a super cool song, just right out the gate. It's got this really cool riff intertwining two different guitars, as well as this really awesome, just driving drum track. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and play a snippet of that for you now, so you can kind of get a feel for the album and this awesome song. So, as you could hear, that was pretty high energy, but the great thing about Silent Alarm is that it blasts right out of the gate with songs like Helicopter and Like Eating Glass and Banquet, which are really high energy, really cutting, really precise. Helicopter even gets a little political. But then it kind of calms down. It goes into more chill songs like Blue Light and This Modern Love, which are really much softer and really emotional. So the whole album kind of takes you through this emotional roller coaster in a way. It's really a fantastic album. Unfortunately, they don't make it on vinyl anymore, but if they did, I would be right there. Bloc Party is actually releasing a Silent Alarm live edition, I think in February, since they're actually on tour right now, doing playing all of Silent Alarm live. Unfortunately, they're not coming to the US, or at least they haven't announced that yet, but definitely be on the lookout for that. And to finish out, I'll play you a clip of So Here We Are, my other favorite track off of Silent Alarm, and just try to listen and contrast this to that first clip of Helicopter I played. And they're both off the same album, and they really fit together nicely, but you can see kind of the difference between the really driving, political, high energy thing and this very kind of chimey, twinkly, emotional kind of song. So enjoy. All right, so now that we've got through that, we're going to move on to new releases. We've got a lot out, so let's just get started. We've got an album called Thank You for Today by Death Cab for Cutie. Now, this wasn't actually too recent. I think it might be 1 or 2 months ago. And this is actually the first album without their longtime guitarist, Chris Walla, which is rather unfortunate that he left the band. But they seem to be doing okay because this is a great album. They actually pursue a bit more of an electronic approach versus their very indie folk kind of thing that they've been going with. But still definitely worth a listen. Check that out. We've got a heck of an indie album here titled 10 Songs That Happened When You Left Me With My Stupid Heart. Just my rule of thumb, if an album title is longer than 3 to 5 words, it is by default an indie album. So that definitely passes the test. And that one is out by Darwin Dees. He's a really great musician. Actually, he was just recently in Texas touring. I think he went to Austin and Dallas. They never come to Houston, do they? I mean, it's the 4th largest city in the U.S. You'd think more people would come, right? I mean, like the Wonder Years, they're coming too, but they're only going to Corpus Christi. Who does that? Corpus Christi? Really? Anyways, let's get back into it. We've got an album. This one actually was released quite a bit ago, but I still think it's worth mentioning. It is Big Red Machine's self-titled album. If you're familiar with Bon Iver, the singer of and main songwriter of Bon Iver, Justin Vernon, actually works in Big Red Machine as well. He's their singer, and it's sort of like a compilation of other indie folk artists that made this band. And it's definitely worth a listen. If you like Bon Iver, kind of the folk indie thing, go check it out. It's actually a little happier, a little more high energy than Bon Iver's kind of the very cold, raw, emotional thing. But still, like I said, definitely worth a listen. Rostam has a new single out called In a River, and actually he just released the acoustic version, I think yesterday or 2 days ago. If you're familiar with Vampire Weekend, Rostam used to be in that band. He was their, he was kind of like a multi-instrumentalist and backup singer, and he also produced all of their albums. He left the band in early 2016, which was a huge blow to all Vampire Weekend fans, myself included. But once you heard his debut album, Half Light, it was amazing, beautiful. If you love Vampire Weekend, or if you love music in general, check out the album Half Light by Rostam. It's amazing. We've got another new album out titled Evening Machines by Gregory Alan Isakov, kind of fitting the theme of indie folk that we've been going with, like Big Red Machine and Death Cab for Cutie. And next we've got A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships. There's another indie album title for you, from the masters of indie album titles, the 1975. Their last album was titled I Like It When You Sleep, For You Are So Beautiful, Yet So Unaware of It. Yes, that was the full album title. But for this new album, they've actually released 5 lead singles. Most recently, they released Sincerity is Scary, kind of a very jazzy, kind of soul-infused song. And then sort of more traditional 1975 with their single It's Not Loving If It's Not With You. Very kind of pop, 80s sort of thing. Really great song. Definitely recommend checking that out. That's been one of the top albums that I'm really excited for. And the full album comes out on November 30th, so keep an eye out for that. Then another album that we've got coming out very soon is Simulation Theory by Muse. And geez, You have got to see the album cover on this thing. I mean, it's just like lasers and goggles. And if you heard the songs, this album is full on 200% 80s. They've got a couple lead singles out as well. I haven't gotten that big of or that much of a chance to listen to them, but hey, it's Muse. They never fail to put out quality music, so definitely check it out, even if it's painfully 80s. Last but not least, we actually have a new single out titled Thank You Next by Ariana Grande. This comes just 2 months after her release of her last album, Sweetener, but it would seem that she's already gearing up for her next album, which I believe will share the same name as the single, Thank You Next. And this sort of comes in the wake of her famous breakup with her fiance, Pete Davidson, but she was quoted as saying that the album wouldn't be any shade or anything like that. It would just be love and gratitude. So keep an eye out for that. And with that finished up, we move on to the second half of our episode, the discussion topic. For today, I'm going to be doing a bit more of an informative topic and telling you all about microphones. No matter who you are, whether you're a musician or not, almost everyone has interacted with a microphone before. You gave a toast at a wedding, you did the spelling bee, everyone's used microphones before. But most people don't even really know what microphones are. They just think, oh, it's magical, you talk into it, and you hear sound from a speaker. But obviously, they're a little more complicated than that. At their core, microphones are transducers, which means they convert sound to electrical signal. And the way they do this is through the diaphragm. And the diaphragm is basically a piece of usually paper, metal, or plastic, very thin film that sits inside of the microphone. And when sound strikes it, it vibrates and it's attached to a coil that outputs electrical signal, which then goes to your audio interface or your speaker. And the thing with microphones, though, is that the electrical signal that they output is actually really weak. It's really low level, and that's called mic level. But to use it, you need to amplify it to what's called line level, which is the industry standard volume with which you work with audio. And to do that, you use what's called a preamp. Now, some mics have preamps built into them, whereas sometimes your audio interface will have one, and that's necessary to get a usable signal out of your microphone. And finally, you have polar patterns, which are basically the area around the mic where it picks up sound. So three of the main ones are cardioid, omnidirectional, and figure 8. Cardioid essentially only picks up what's in front of the mic. Omnidirectional picks up, obviously, everything around the mic. And figure 8 only picks up what's in front of and behind the mic, but not on the sides. One last thing is that there are also different types of microphones. The two main types are condenser and dynamic. Dynamic mics are usually much more sturdy and more kind of rugged. These are usually used on stage, kind of your traditional microphone like the black cylinder with the silver ball on top. And these are used, usually with touring musicians or in performances because you can drop them or whatever. You can run them over with a car. I'm not kidding, seriously. And they'll still work fine, as well as the fact that they only pick up sound that's very close to them, and this helps to avoid feedback issues on stage. However, for like recording in a studio or, for instance, a podcast, I'm recording this on a condenser mic. Condenser mics are your friend. They're a lot more fragile, but they also give you a lot more detail in your sound. But normally they're only used in studios because they pick up a lot more sound because they're trying to give you that detail. So you need to be in a more controlled environment where you have less sound coming through, but the sound quality is much higher. It's a lot crisper, and it's generally more useful. Anyways, that closes out our very first episode of Soundcheck. Thanks so much for listening. Other times, I hope to have maybe some performances or interviews in the studio. We'll see how that progresses as the show goes on. But like I said, thank you very much for tuning in. I'll see you next time. I'm Ricky Moctezuma.